Alongside Eric Kane, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price for the Rocky Top Roundtable on this South Carolina week. Guys, Tennessee, with their last real road test, I mean, I know they're on the road next week at Vanderbilt, but not nearly the road environment in Nashville that there will be in Columbia on Saturday night. Expect the crowd to be loud early, and we'll see how Tennessee handles it.
Well, I think it's all about how Tennessee plays. And Tennessee can take the crowd, that crowd in particular, I think, Rob, out of that game very quickly if Tennessee gets off to a fast start.
Yeah, and especially, weather's probably going to be a contributing factor. It's not going to be a pleasant evening, most likely. And if the home team does not give those people something to shout about early, it really works to Tennessee's advantage.
Yeah, I think one of the big reasons why Tennessee was never able to take the crowd out of the football game against Georgia is it never got in a rhythm offensively because of the pre-snap penalties or false starts and all that type of stuff, or not enough big plays. And of course, that's when Georgia scored a lot in that first half. So I think Tennessee can dictate how that crowd reacts, and I'm intrigued to see how it responds after the showing at Georgia.
And I think it's intriguing to see how South Carolina responds. Right? I mean, the last time they were in Williams-Brice Stadium, they fell down 17-0 to Missouri. Game was essentially over. They couldn't get back in it. And then we also all saw what happened in the Florida game. That game was over at the end of the first quarter. So where's South Carolina at? Can they do anything to keep their crowd into the game, I think is another question, Austin.
Well, they were sitting there at 5-2 and seemed to have a little bit of momentum, even though it was kind of a smoke and mirrors 5-2.
Very much.
And then they lose to Missouri, beat Vanderbilt, and then, of course, get pummeled by Florida where they don't score an offensive touchdown. Defense looked, very pedestrian to weak if based off just their ability to stop Florida's running game. I don't want to build South Carolina into something they're not. I just feel like if Tennessee comes in and doesn't turn the football over and does what they normally do, they're going to win this game rather easily.
Again, I'm curious to see how Shane Beamer's team responds, Rob, given what the last 3 weeks have been for them.
And just kind of glancing through some of their, South Carolina social media stuff, seems to be a lot of angst and anxiety about the way this season has kind of, so again, Austin said it was smoke and mirrors, but they were 5-2, and man, things have gone south in a hurry. They scored 16 total points against Missouri and Florida. Offense does not look good. And, I mean, those the 3 SEC wins they've got: Kentucky without Will Levis, Texas A&M, which is just in shambles, and Vanderbilt.
And Rob, some things you pointed out on the Volquest podcast earlier this week. I mean, South Carolina has improved in terms of points per game from last season to this season, but in SEC play, that's not been really good. And it's only been by about 6 points overall in that span. 2 big problems: you couldn't score last year, you couldn't stop the run last year for South Carolina, and I understand 374 yards inflates it a little bit, but South Carolina cannot stop the run. It's a worse rush defense than it was a season ago right now. I think there's opportunity for Tennessee and its trio of backs, and maybe its quarterback to kind of impact the game early on in that regard.
I'm interested to see what Tennessee can do because Florida just gashed them on the ground. And one would think Tennessee will come in and implement the same thing, but I mean, there is a little bit of pressure to keep the stats rolling for Hendon Hooker in his Heisman campaign. And I think there's some possibilities to still move the ball through the air. So I'm kind of interested to see how they attack it early.
Well, I think they want to be balanced. And so how does South Carolina play? Are they going to play single safety high and crowd the box? If they do, Tennessee's going to throw it over their head in man coverage stuff, just like they did a week ago against Missouri. If South Carolina wants to lay back and play split safeties, then I think Tennessee runs the football early in the game to get South Carolina's defense to react to the run game. You got to think South Carolina's going to come in and say, we're going to stop the run game first. We don't want to get gashed like we did against Florida, but we'll see exactly how South Carolina elects to play it. I think you got a motivated Tennessee offense, particularly in the offensive front. You guys have all talked to offensive linemen this week. They're not elated with the way that they played the last 2 ball games. They were not great against Missouri, certainly didn't play well against Georgia. I think they're looking to get back on track this week as well.
I'm interested to see kind of, what Tennessee does when they do run the ball. I think we're going to see more Dylan Sampson this week. I'm not saying he's going to get 20 touches, but I think he's not going to go back to the shelf and put up, on the cupboard either.
I think you have to after what you saw against Missouri. I mean, that wasn't garbage time, which, most of his playing time till that point, other than the one we all remember from LSU, had come with the game out of hand in non-conference game. And he just, I think Jabari Small and Jalen White are quality SEC backs, but man, Dylan Sampson showed us a gear that no other Tennessee back has.
And the winning move for Dylan Sampson last week had nothing to do with the ball in his hands. It's how he pass protected. Mm-hmm. Jerry Mack talked about that on Tuesday when he met the media, to get the confidence, for Dylan to have that confidence and then everybody around him to have the confidence to be able to handle blitz pickup. it changes how much belief you have in playing him in any situation.
Flipping to the defensive side of the ball, South Carolina not great on offense. Doesn't matter if they have Spencer Rattler or whoever; they're just not very good. And there's a lot of angst around Marcus Satterfield, the OC. A lot of talk that he may not be back a year from now. This defense has kind of found their footing with, I guess, more consistency in the secondary and the same faces week in and week out in the secondary. You see Brandon Turnage there getting a lot of hands on his balls, even if he hadn't picked a lot of balls off.
Well, again, I think it's the aggressiveness. I think that's the difference when you see Turnage and Slaughters. They're trying to make plays on the ball instead of tackling the guy in front of them after he catches the ball. And I think that changes kind of where Tennessee is defensively. South Carolina has had some big plays, Rob. They don't have game breakers, you don't think, outside. And so I think Tennessee can kind of sit back and plant their feet and attack in some of the passing game stuff.
I completely agree. Rattler obviously has some arm talent, but has not put it together this year in SEC plays, only thrown 5 touchdowns. You mentioned it. They don't have the game breakers on the outside. And I think the more and more that you see Turnage and Slaughter playing, I mean, they're just more confident guys. I mean, like you said, they are trying to make plays as opposed to, in my opinion, being worried about plays being made on them.
And I understand that South Carolina's gotten 4 or 5 plays of 45-plus yards or whatever. It was a stat Josh Heupel referenced earlier this week. But they're going to throw a lot to their tight ends, going to throw a lot to their running backs, a lot of the intermediate passing game. Jaheim Bell is kind of a Mr. Do-It-All. He's run the football. He's really good at that tight end position, kind of like what Princeton Fan's been a little bit for Tennessee, but more so not just a goal line personnel. Austin Stogner, the other tight end. Antoine Well, the James Madison receivers come over and provided a little bit for him, but overall it's just not been a pretty product from start to finish offensively, and a lot of that has to do with the quarterback play, inconsistencies, and Spencer Rattler continues to throw the football to the other team.
And they haven't protected him great either. I mean, he's had to move around a lot. So where is Tennessee with their rush lanes, and where is Tennessee's ability to get to the quarterback with their front? Do they get back to some of those twists and stunts and some of that game that they played against the Kentuckys and the LSUs? Can they create some confusion on that offensive line for South Carolina?
Tough place to play when you let the crowd get into it. I think that start for Tennessee very, very much important on Saturday as they look to try to take the crowd out early and put 40 or 50 on the Gamecocks.
Yeah, and I think the
put
biggest
45 on them a year ago.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and 35-0 to start. To me, Rob, the one thing that if you're Tennessee, you got to be really careful of early. You almost play conservative on special teams in this game. It's a lot of punt safe. It's a lot of just be really mindful that Shane Beamer is going to pull out every stop he can to try to block a kick, to try to create a fake punt. Don't give them anything early in the kicking game to give them any kind of momentum.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because, I mean, they are going to have to try and pull it all the stops because, if they play vanilla, I mean, they've got no chance. They have to create something like that. And to your point, I think Tennessee is going to be completely on guard against something like that happening.
You go punt safe a lot in this football game. Keep the defense out there. Trayvon Flowers can go back and he can be the deep man. You can maybe take a Jalen McCullough out, put a D. Williams in there. But with the defense staying out there, playing in front of it, because I do expect some trick plays in terms of just trying to steal possessions. There was a defensive lineman, guys, is that right, that tried to throw a touchdown pass on the goal line last year, and McCullough picked it off. So be ready for anything because South Carolina is bowl eligible, but knows it will have to steal possessions in order to stay in this football game.
Yeah, they close with Tennessee this week and then Clemson next week. So, after that 5-2 start, they could very well end up just 6-6 if they can't steal one of these games the next 2 weeks. For Eric Kane, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price for the Rocky Top Roundtable.